Hello and welcome to Stellar Strategy Gaming. Today we will be discussing the issues with the action economy. Now, for those who don't know what the action economy is, the action economy is how D&D works. Basically, is someone takes an action, then someone can react to it, and then the next turn happens. There's a little more to it than that, of course, but we're not here to teach you how to play the game. So we're just going to assume if you clicked on this and know what it means, you probably already know some of what we're going to bring up here. I'm going to let Ben take it away with the first thoughts, and then back to me.
So I will do a quick recap on what action economy is and what the problem is. So essentially, the best way to put it is the D&D fighter versus, let's say, a wizard. A D&D fighter gets more and more attacks as time goes on. The exact particulars of how that all works out aren't important, but by the time you get to level 20 as a fighter, you're getting something like 5 or 6 attacks per turn, and if you multiclass into monk, you get some other things, and so on and so forth. Whereas if for whatever reason you're doing melee attacks as a basic wizard, you're getting 1 attack per round. So in that scenario, the fighter has the clear advantage, and if you have 2 people against 1 target, at least in theory, the 2 people are getting a lot more attacks or whatever action it is you're taking than the target is, so that gives an advantage. And when you add into that the fact that moving away from an enemy requires you to either take the disengage action or gives the enemy an attack of opportunity, you wind up in this situation where if you're not careful, you wind up invariably with the big bad surrounded by the party and getting massacred because they're getting multiple actions to the big bad's one.
Yes, and it's actually rather fitting that this is following up our issues with challenge rating video, because the majority of issues that are in the challenge rating system currently have to do actually with the action economy and how the action economy itself is quite broken. And as previously mentioned, the ganging up issue, but I feel like it's a bit of an understatement, if anything, because I was talking about this when we were planning this video. A lich can be killed by a level 1 party if they're clever enough, basically, because they'll have extra turns where the Lich will only have their 1 and their legendary action to do things. And even then, a lot of DMs will ban legendary actions because it allows Liches to insta-kill party members, which just makes it even easier for players to exploit the action economy. This is not helped by the fact that there are entire builds around exploiting the action economy, and to make matters worse, there are summoning spells in the game, which are rather notorious for their having to roll extra initiative in the middle of combat and sort it out in the tab. And even if you're just saying, okay, they share a turn, that's still 5, 6 extra attacks most of the time, or 1 very big extra attack, depending. So, yeah, lots of issues here, and I can only see it getting worse if you add Hydras, and on and on and on.
So let's start unpacking some of the, I think we've more or less elaborated on what the problem is. I'd like to start unpacking a couple of solutions, or at least things that help. One of the things that mistakes a lot of DMs make is they say, okay, this character is the big bad guy. He's going to be, say, a Duergar wizard who the party is now taking on. So now, from the start with a wizard, you've got a couple of things that may or may not be in the monster manual or whatever book it is you're taking this creature out of. The manuals do have recommended spells for this kind of creature to have, but think in terms of what this kind of creature would take in terms of their spell list if they were going to be in a situation like this, if they knew they might have groups of people coming after them. So you might add something like a teleportation spell, Misty Step, something like that. So at the very least, when the party gangs up on them, they have a way to just not be there anymore. They can reestablish somewhere else and start taking cracks at the party from somewhere else. In addition, rogues at a low level do get the ability to take the disengage action as a bonus action. Who's to say that your Duergar wizard didn't take a couple of levels at rogue at some point in their 500 years or so of life that dwarves get?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, and similarly for the players, because the action economy can definitely be broken for them as well, because part of the reason why Lich is good is because they can keep bringing things back to life. especially for higher level players, you need to start giving extra attacks or extra actions entirely to people who wouldn't normally get them. Another conversation we were just having is people are wondering why the Bladesinger Wizard is all the rage these days. And it is because it is the only wizard which gets an extra attack, which makes it the most broken wizard, especially when its physical attacks are also getting +5 during the duration, etc., etc., etc. And again, now the optimal build is 4 Bladesingers and a Cleric, not the normal balance. And so the solution is have the Monk also get a complete extra action at higher levels. It might seem broken, but it's completely necessary to maintain balance. And frankly, especially for the Monk, it's kind of unbelievable that someone who's mastered the art of moving incredibly quickly with incredible force somehow cannot do something like wield a sword that they just found on the ground after also having taken an action, which is the current state of the game if you're going by strict rules lawyering. So
that is true. And one of the problems with the game, we have covered this in previous videos a little bit, including in the Cleric video, which you should go watch right now, is that certain classes are great at low levels. For example, Monks at level 1 are one of the strongest melee classes because of their unarmored defense and because of their martial arts ability that allows them to essentially get an additional attack. That's all about the action economy. Something to also keep in mind as you are building your villains, obviously you take the party into account, but going along with my previous point, look through the player's handbook. Look at what races can do. For example, the Battlemaster Fighter has an ability called Riposte, which means if an enemy misses an attack, they can use their reaction to counter, which actually is a lot more like what actual combat is. I've been in a few actual physical fights and I've done some training with weapons. Okay, I'm going to swing my sword at you. Now it's your turn to swing your sword at me. There's a lot more movement happening. Additionally, for me, a big sort of axe to grind I have is the way attacks of opportunity work. I can completely understand if you're just standing there doing nothing, you're not engaged with anybody, and an enemy walks by, sure, you're going to take a swing at them as you pass. Why wouldn't you? But if you are engaged in a life and death sword fight with an orc, let's say, and somebody walks past behind you, you're not going to turn your back on the thing that's actively trying to kill you to take a swipe at whatever's passing by. Similarly, if you are engaged with something and you've just swung your weapon at it and missed, or hit for that matter, and it moves away, you're not going to have time to then rechamber the weapon and swing again. It just doesn't make sense. It's going to be really important to discuss it with your party, how you're going to tailor the rules. But the rules do need some tailoring on this, especially as you get up into higher levels. And all credit to Wizards of the Coast and the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. There are reasons why they do all of this, but you do have to treat a lot of these rules as optional.
Yeah, well, and it's also important to remember with a lot of this stuff that while 5e is great and 3.5e is also pretty good, the current state of the game was largely created because they were losing profits in 4e. It wasn't... a lot of people will say the older editions are better, and it is important always to remember that 5e was created to save profits, not necessarily to be a great game like some of the older editions were. So, also fair to Wizards for making a few mistakes with this one is what I'm trying to say. But, even so, definite tailoring needs to happen, and... again, with the weapons thing as well, this just bothers me how it takes, in the base game, I think it's a bonus action or an action to draw a weapon. I forget which one.
It's free action.
Free action. It's still kind of broken to me, but, I was DMing a session just the other week where the players were passing around a sword that was incredibly magical and could change based on the enemy they were fighting. And to me, it was just completely ridiculous that they couldn't just toss the weapon over to someone else and then pass a roll, and if they failed, they take some damage, and if they succeed, they get the weapon, because, it takes me, 2 seconds to toss that miniature, maybe? And I get that a turn is supposed to be 6 seconds, but you can do so much in 6 seconds if you really tried, and you have to remember that characters are already by default better than the average mortal by quite a bit. Even a level 1 fighter is substantially stronger and better at combat than your average peasant. So to say that I could toss a miniature in 2 seconds, someone with 18 dexterity is probably going to be able to do that much faster than myself.
And there again, you want to discuss with the party what they can and cannot do. That was an on-the-fly thing. I think it was I who had the idea to pass the magic weapon on to the next person in the order, and you could always give the bad guy an opportunity, something like an opportunity attack where they can take a reaction, try to foul it, maybe even catch it themselves. So now, oh no, the big bad now has that magical weapon. So yeah, I think the general theme we've landed on here is that I think part of the reason why combat in D&D can be very boring is that because of the action economy, because it does wind up being just sort of surround the bad guy and pile on the bad guy. When I've been in situations when I was fighting multiple people, whether in an actual fight or in like a sparring game, a LARP game, or something like that. It is a situation where if you're good at it, the art is to keep moving and keep it so you're only fighting one person at a time. And you don't just stand there and wait for everybody to make their turn. It just doesn't work that way. I'm not looking for high levels of realism in my game with liches and zombies. What I'm looking for is fun. And it stops being fun when you've surrounded the monster and everybody's just taking their turn and you're sort of counting down their hit points.
Yes, my final thought on this is that if you're not ready to have the action economy discussion in your game, whether it be because the campaign's mid-session or because a character just unlocked a new ability which completely breaks the action economy, which has happened to everyone a few times, I think, you don't have to worry about it too much. Never be afraid to avoid combat to make sure that the game's integrity stays put. Because what I've found is that when your game loses that integrity of, oh, the action economy is stable, or, oh, challenge rating actually is accurate, or resistances matter, for example, once your game starts to lose that, it's very hard to reclaim it. And so you always have to have that prioritized. But with that, we hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe even, and leave a comment down below on what you think.
Absolutely. Tell us how you think you can make the action economy work better. Tell us what you missed. As always, we definitely thank you for watching. And remember, if you have some combination of spells and abilities that allows you to cast Fireball 6 times in one turn, you must never, under any circumstances, ask the size of the room or where your allies are. Thank you.